Dude, Mark Bell, the sugar diet. What's going on with this?
We're just going to jump right in, huh?
Yeah.
Start talking about
YouTube. The attention span isn't very long.
Yeah, start talking about sugar. Yes, I became interested in this recently. I had an injury to my foot that's been super annoying, and I've been wanting to still stay like lean and stay in shape and stuff like that. And so I've been just experimenting with diet stuff. And I came across some stuff from Cole Robinson, and Cole Robinson was talking about sugar fasting and sugar diet.
Yeah, he's the snake diet guy, right?
Yeah, the first time I heard about it, I was like, I don't know what he's talking about too much. But I started listening a little bit more, and he said, treat it like a fast, except for you have some sugar in there. I'm like, oh, I've done this before. I've actually done this with fat before, where I would drink bulletproof coffee. I think a lot of people have tried that, and probably a lot of your listeners probably tried that. I'd have bulletproof coffee, and I wouldn't eat till later in the day, and then I would kind of have a normal meal. And at that time, I was kind of keto and low carb and stuff. And so it would be something that would still be keto-ish, but I would have, a large meal, and most of my calories would be in the latter half of the day. So I'm like, this actually sounds similar, except for now it's with sugar. And I think at first people would think that, sugar is going to cause insulin resistance and sugar is going to cause all these problems. But I've had enough people on the podcast, and I've understand nutrition enough to know that that's not necessarily the case. It's just that sugar has kind of gotten demonized, because sometimes when people think of sugar, they think of something like a donut or a cookie or ice cream. And we know that those things not only have a lot of sugar, but they also have a lot of fat as well.
I guess the question that I have is, when you look at like the standard American diet, obviously you have high sugar, high fat, or high refined carbohydrates and high fat. I could arguably say that sugar and refined starches are in two completely different categories, quite frankly, if you get down into the nitty gritty of it, which we can talk about. But, the issue people have with the standard American diet, the issue that you and I both have with the standard American diet, is the combination of fats and carbs, right? And if you look at any kind of setting, in any kind of laboratory setting, one of the ways that they induce metabolic dysfunction is with high saturated fat and or high sugar, usually in conjunction with. They do their normal diet, rat chow or whatever, is going to have a high amount of carbohydrates, and then they're going to also add high amounts of fat to try to induce some metabolic damage. The question I have is, where do you think the timeline is? So if I was to have a high amount of sugar at 7 a.m., but then I had a high amount of fat at 11 a.m., where is the line with the fats and carbs coming in together, right? Because I'm in agreement with you that sugar standalone, let's take out, for example, that it could be refined. Let's just forget that refined sugar ever exists, right? Let's just talk about just sugar. Could be coming from fruit, could be coming from sugar cane. Okay, it's a real thing. Our bodies are designed to be able to handle it. So it's not really that's the problem. Well, when do you think the line is? So if I was to have sugar at 7 and fat at 11, would that be mixing fats and carbs?
I don't know if there's like a magical time frame, if it's like 2.5 hours or something like that. But in my opinion, your body should be able to clear out glucose pretty fast. I guess it would depend on how much you ingested. It also might depend on the type of carbohydrates you had. So if you had whole fruit versus a smoothie or something like that versus juice, the time for clearance might be a little different. But I'm not that worried about fat and carbohydrates in a sense of like there being some sort of magical thing that happens to you and poof, you turn into someone that's 500 pounds because you had carbs and fats like in the same day, or even within fairly close proximity to each other, or even at the same meal, where I don't love to see fats and carbohydrates, or the reason why I don't love to see those two things together, is mainly just for overeating. Yeah. I do understand that there's metabolic gridlock that can happen as well when we start to really dive into like just consuming way too many macronutrients. I understand that that's a real thing, and that can be a huge problem. But I think in this case, something like sugar fasting, what you're supposed to be trying to do is you're trying to basically eliminate fats from your diet, or at least the early part of the day. And then the latter half of the day, you can have some fats. So like what I'm recommending to people is I'm usually recommending them to have like a leaner source of meat in the evening. Now, again, if they were to have like, bacon and eggs and have, or they just ate pizza because they couldn't follow the diet or something like that, I don't necessarily think that the fat calories are necessarily the problem. I just think that, again, my biggest thing when I look at fat and carbs together is just it's just so easy to overeat.
Yeah, that's well, and you think about from any sort of evolutionary standpoint whatsoever, no matter how far back you really want to look up until maybe the 1940s, it's probably not that common to have a surplus of fats and carbohydrates at any one time, right? Like, and there's a lot of people that promote sort of an ancestral way of living that will say, well, we never really had a surplus of carbohydrates. And I don't find that to be true. I'm not an anthropologist, so I can't say with certainty, but I'm pretty sure that, our body has developed systems to handle glucose for a reason, and it's not just because of gluconeogenesis.
Yeah, I'll just butt in for a second. I mean, I think somebody having like steak and egg or steak and potatoes or something like that, I don't think is really like super harmful. Again, it might be like if somebody's eating a ribeye, right? If someone's having a ribeye that has butter on it and the potatoes have butter on it as well, now we're just getting into a picture that you're just consuming like a crazy amount of energy.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're also, at what point do we draw a line with processing? And I'm saying that in a sort of hypothetical sense. Like, I'm not drawing a line with butter as processing, right? I feel like butter is technically processed, right? You're churning it, you're making it processed. You're altering the state of the food. You are technically altering the state of the food matrix. So I'm factoring all these different discussions in because I feel like the food matrix is a big piece of this discussion, right? Whereas you look at, okay, how would we typically consume carbohydrates from some sort of evolutionary fashion? I would imagine it would come from a significant bolus of fruit, a significant bolus of honey, perhaps even maple syrup, and then maybe a little bit further on down the line, maybe like molasses, which technically is processed because it's heated, right? Mm-hmm. Paul Saladino and I had this discussion. So it's quite interesting when you look like the antioxidant profile of even these really high concentration carbohydrate sources. They are still processed or not. That's a dense amount of carbohydrates that humans would have had access to. So I feel like we are designed to be able to handle that. I just don't think that it would probably come at the same time as getting like hunting and getting your kill, right? It's almost makes sense that you would go out, you would get your prey, and you probably would have that in lieu of going and harvesting a bunch of berries and honey and things like that.
To me, that makes a lot of sense. And, one of the biggest reasons why I chose to do this diet was just like, how much I love this stuff. Like, how much I love nutrition. How much I love training. But maybe like the listeners, maybe they don't understand. Like I truly enjoy training and I enjoy experimenting and I enjoy, taking 5 minutes to make a intra workout carbohydrate protein BCAA concoction. I've swilled down, like 20 branch chain amino acid capsules back in like 1990 because I read something from Charles Poliquin. And then in between my sets, I would like burp and I'd burp like this BCAA powder. And then it turns out EAAs are more effective, right? And we see these swings and we see all this stuff. But I just really am intrigued and really interested in a lot of this stuff. And one of the reasons why my podcast is called The Power Project is because it's a project. It's an ongoing project. And I'm constantly and consistently trying to work on myself. So whether it's diet or whether it's something for my mind or something for me working on my attitude or working on trying to be more positive or trying to change my language or clean up my language or get better at communication, I'm constantly trying to work on stuff just to get a little bit better. And that's that the sugar diet it happened to hit right at the right point because I mentioned I had an injury to my foot, so that took away running for me. And I really fell in love with running, and you get that runner's high, and I don't have that at the moment, so it kind of stinks. I've been out for about 4 months now, and hopefully I get this stupid thing healed up. But I've been able to sugar fast during it, so my whole intention with that was to drop weight. And I wanted to go from, I was about 225 down to 200. And I've been between 210 and today I was 215 after we worked out. So I sweat a little bit, but I also was fully clothed and weighed 215 pounds. So I'm dropping weight. It's actually quite slow, but I intentionally have slowed it down a little bit because at first I was able to drop weight pretty fast. And I was like, you know what? It's actually going to make more sense for me to drop weight a little slower because I do not want to lose muscle mass. I think some people are like, oh, Mark probably doesn't care if he loses muscle mass because he's pretty big or pretty jacked. But I do care. I don't want to lose muscle mass. I don't want my metabolism to slow down. But as we both know, oftentimes when you lose body fat, you're most likely going to lose some muscle mass. Can you stave it off? Well, I saw a video from Thomas DeLauer where you had a whole discussion about this, and the guy ended up saying, like, you can actually knock that back pretty damn good, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do.